Captain Velter pressed his long, thin fingers against the cool metal of the control panel. His large purple eyes stared at the screen showing his home world below. Smoke rose from burning city. The beautiful crystal spires of New Zeus were now broken stumps. Floating gardens that had taken centuries to grow were ash. Captain, the defense grid is down to 12%, his communications officer said. Her voice shook with fear. Lieutenant Kira was young, barely pasted her first century. She had never seen war like this. Velter nodded slowly. The Zephyrians were a peaceful people. They had built their civilization on art, music, and science. Their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. They believed all life was sacred. That belief was now getting them killed. Through the main viewing screen, he watched another bioship descend toward the planet. The creature was massive, larger than their biggest city. Its black shell gleamed with a wet shine. Thousands of smaller creatures poured from openings along its sides, like angry insects from a disturbed nest. How many more are coming? Velter asked. Our long-range sensors show at least 40 more bioships approaching. The sensor operator replied. They will arrive within 6 hours. Velter closed his eyes. 40 more ships meant millions more of the creatures. His people called them the Swarm, but that name did not capture their true horror. They were not just insects, they were something worse. They were intelligent insects that worked together with perfect coordination. Sir Admiral Zenkara is requesting permission to attempt another attack run, Lieutenant Kira said. Denied, Velter replied quickly. We have lost 8 ships already. Their bio armor absorbs our energy weapons and makes them stronger. Our plasma cannons feed them power. Our sonic disruptors only make them angry. The truth was simple and terrible. Every weapon the Zephyrians had developed over thousands of years was useless against the Swarm. The creatures had evolved to eat energy. They turned their weapons into food. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the surface. Kira said. It is from the emergency shelter beneath the capital. Put it through. A new voice filled the bridge. It was old and tired. This is Chancellor Melvac speaking from the primary survival bunker. Captain, how long can you hold them off? Velter looked at his instruments. 3 of his ship's 4 main power cores were offline. His crew was exhausted. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight. Chancellor, I estimate we have perhaps 2 hours before our position becomes impossible to maintain. There was silence from the surface. Then the Chancellor spoke again. Captain, I am authorizing the use of Protocol 7. Every officer on the bridge turned to look at their captain. Protocol 7 was their most desperate option. It had never been used. Many believed it would never work. Are you certain, Chancellor? Velter asked. We are dying, Captain. Our children are dying. If there is even a small chance that someone out there might help us, we must try. Nodded to his communications officer. Lieutenant Kira, prepare the long-range communication array for Protocol 7. Transmission. Kira's hands moved quickly over her controls. Sir, the array will need all remaining power from our secondary cores. Once we send the signal, we will have no power for weapons or shields. Do it. The ship shuddered as power flowed from the main systems to the communication array. The lights dimmed. The normal hum of the engines became a whisper. Array is charging, Captain. Kira reported, signal strength will reach maximum in 30 seconds. Velter activated the ship's internal communication system. Attention all. Crew, this is your captain. In moments, we will send a message to the stars. It is our hope that somewhere in the galaxy someone will hear our call and come to help. If no one comes, we will face our end with dignity. It has been my honor to serve with all of you. He closed the shipwide channel and opened a new one. This signal would travel faster than light, reaching distant star systems in months instead of years, but it would also announce their location to every hostile force within range. This is captain of the Zapparan Defense Fleet, he began. His voice was calm and clear. We are transmitting from the Kepler 442 system. Our world is under attack by a force we cannot defeat. They are called the Swarm. They are creatures that consume entire civilizations. He paused as another explosion shook his ship. Through the viewing screen he could see 3 more bioships approaching his position. Our weapons cannot harm them. They absorb energy and grow stronger. They heal from physical damage in minutes. They are perfect killers that work as one mind. We estimate that our entire civilization will be extinct within 48 hours. The ship's emergency lights came on as main power failed. Kira worked frantically to maintain the transmission signal. To any who receive this message, we do not ask you to share our fate. We ask only that you remember us. Remember that the Zapparians lived in peace for 3,000 years. We built cities of crystal and gardens in the sky. We wrote songs that could make the stars weep with beauty. Something large struck the ship's hull. Velter could hear the metal groaning under the stress. But if there is anyone out there who has the power to stop these creatures, please help us. We have children in shelters deep underground. They have never seen war. They do not deserve to die because we were too peaceful to defend ourselves properly. The transmission array sparked and went dark. Kira shook her head. Sir, we have lost the array. I do not know if the full message was sent. Velter stood up. Slowly, through the viewing screen he could see dozens of the smaller swarm creatures crawling across his ship's hull. They were cutting through the armor with acid that dripped from their claws. All crew to escape pods, he ordered. Set the ship to self-destruct. In 10 minutes, perhaps we can take some of them with us. As his crew rushed to the escape pods, Velter remained on the bridge. He watched as more biohips surrounded his vessel. The creatures were not just killing his people, they were studying them, learning from them. That made them even more dangerous. He thought about his message traveling through space. Would anyone receive it? Would anyone care about a dying race of peaceful aliens? Most species in the galaxy avoided getting involved in other people's wars. It was safer to stay neutral. But maybe somewhere out there was a species that was different. Maybe there was someone who would hear their cry for help and decide to answer it. Maybe there was a race that was strong enough to fight the swarm and win. Velter activated the self-destruct sequence and headed for the last remaining escape pod. As he strapped himself in, he whispered a prayer to the old gods of his people. Let someone hear us, he said. Let someone come. Escape pod ejected from his dying ship. Just as the self-destruct activated, the explosion was so bright it lit up the night side of his planet below. But even that massive blast only destroyed a few hundred swarm creatures. millions more, continued their work of consuming everything his people had built, far away, traveling at the speed of light toward distant stars. His message continued its journey through the cold darkness of space. In that message was the location of his world, the details of their enemy, and a desperate plea for help from anyone who might be listening. What Captain Velter did not know was that his message would eventually reach a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, a planet where the dominant species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, a planet where the creatures were not peaceful at all, but something much more dangerous. They were creatures that actually enjoyed fighting impossible battles. Dr. Lisa Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. She had been working at the SETI Institute for 15 years, listening to signals from space. Most days brought nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional false alarm from Earth satellites, but today was different. The signal had come in at 3:47 a.m. At first, she thought it was another equipment malfunction. The pattern was too complex, too organized to be natural. But as she ran it through the translation software, her coffee grew cold and her hands began to shake. This was not random noise. This was a message, a desperate cry for help from somewhere far away. Computer, run translation protocol again, she said to the AI system. The artificial intelligence worked for several minutes, breaking down the signal into mathematical concepts, then into basic language structures. When it finished, the words appeared on her screen in simple English. Lisa read the message 3 times before she believed it was real. An entire alien civilization was dying. They were being destroyed by something called the Swarm. They were asking anyone who could hear them to help. She picked up her phone and dialed her supervisor, Dr. Peterson. This is Lisa. I need you to come in right now. I have something you need to see. 20 minutes later, Dr. Peterson stood behind her chair, reading the translated message on her screen. His face grew pale as he reached the end. Lisa, are you absolutely certain this signal came from outside our solar system? I have checked everything twice. The signal originated from the Kepler 442 system. That is 200 light years away. Dr. Peterson, this message is real. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up Lisa's phone and dialed a number from memory. This is Dr. Peterson. At SETI, I need to speak to General Hayes immediately. Tell her it is a matter of national security. 4 hours later, Lisa found herself in a conference room in Washington, D.C. Around the table sat people she had only seen on television. The President of the United States, Jake Sullivan, sat at the head of the table. Military officers with stars on their shoulders filled most of the other chairs. Dr. Martinez. President Sullivan said, please explain to everyone what you discovered this morning. Lisa stood up on shaky legs. She was used to talking to other scientists, not to the most powerful people in the world. Mr. President, at 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time, our radio telescopes received a signal from the Kepler 442 star system. The message was clearly artificial and contained appears to be a plea for help. She activated the room's display system and showed the translated message. The room was silent as everyone read the words from Captain Velter. The aliens described their enemy as something called the Swarm, Lisa continued. According to their message, these creatures absorb energy weapons and heal quickly from physical damage. The aliens believe their entire civilization be extinct within days. General Patricia Hayes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward in her chair. Dr. Martinez, how long ago was this message sent? Based on the signal strength and distance, I estimate it was transmitted approximately 4 months ago. The room erupted in quiet conversations. President Sullivan raised his hand for silence. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to make a decision. A peaceful alien civilization asked for help, and somehow their message reached us. The question is, what do we do about it? Secretary of Defense Robert Kine spoke first. Mr. President, we have no way to know if these aliens are telling the truth. This could be a trap from you 200 light years away. President Sullivan asked. Sir, we also have no way to know if they are still alive. General Hayes added. 4 months is a long time in a war. President Sullivan turned to Dr. Martinez. In your professional opinion, was this message genuine? Lisa nodded without hesitation. Mr. President, I have studied alien signals for 15 years. This message contained emotional markers, desperation indicators, and cultural references that would be impossible to fake. These people were truly afraid and asking for help. The president was quiet for a moment, then he looked around the table. I want opinions. If we decide to help, what would that look like? General Hayes opened a folder in front of her. Mr. President, we have been developing deep space military capabilities for 20 years. Our fastest ships could reach the Kepler 442 system in approximately 3 months. We could deploy a full expeditionary force. What kind of force? The president asked. Our best estimate is that we would need approximately 50,000 personnel. This would include Marine Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and support staff. We would also bring our most advanced weapon systems. Secretary Kine shook his head. General, you're talking about sending our people to fight an unknown enemy 200 light years from home. If something goes wrong, we cannot send help. They would be completely on their own. Mr. Secretary, General Hayes replied, our military personnel volunteer to go into dangerous situations. That is what they do. President Sullivan stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see the Washington Monument in the distance. After several minutes he returned to his seat. I have made my decision. We are going to help them. Their room was quiet. Mr. President, Secretary Kine said carefully, may I ask why? President Sullivan looked at each person around the table. Because they asked for help, and we have the power to give it. Because if we were the ones sending a desperate message into space, I would hope that someone out there would answer. He paused and looked at General Hayes. General, how quickly can you prepare an expedition? Mr. President, I can have a force ready to depart within 2 weeks. Do it. And General, I want our best people on this mission. If we are going to help these aliens, we are going to do it right. Over the next 10 days, military bases across the United States became centers of frantic activity. The Pentagon sent out classified orders to special operations units worldwide. The message was simple. Volunteers were needed for a classified mission in deep space. Response was overwhelming. Captain Kyle Rodriguez of the Navy SEALs was conducting training exercises in the Pacific when he received his orders. He had been in the military for 12 years and had served in conflicts on every continent. The idea of fighting aliens in another star system was exactly the kind of challenge he had been waiting for. Army Ranger Captain Amy Chen received her briefing at Fort Bragg. She had specialized in mountain warfare and cold weather operations. Her record included successful missions in Afghanistan, Siberia, and Antarctica. When her commanding officer told her about the alien threat, her first question was, when do we leave? But perhaps the most unusual addition to the force was Danny Walsh. Walsh had been a Marine sergeant before. He was court-martialed for excessive violence during a mission in Syria. He had spent 3 years in military prison before being recruited for a classified program that used former criminals as expendable assets in dangerous operations. Walsh and his team of 24 men and women represented humanity's capacity for controlled violence. They were people who had crossed lines that most soldiers would never cross. They were effective, dangerous, and completely willing to do whatever it took to complete their mission. Admiral Steve Parker was chosen to command the expedition fleet. Parker had 30 years of naval experience, including command of carrier groups in both the Atlantic and Pacific, but this would be his first command in deep space. As the ships prepared for departure, Dr. Rachel Moore briefed the troops about their enemy. Moore was a xenobiologist who had studied theoretical alien life forms for most of her career. Now she was about to see them in person. Based on the alien message, the swarm creatures are biological weapons, she told the assembled soldiers. They heal quickly, absorb energy, and work together with perfect coordination. You will be fighting an enemy unlike anything humans have ever faced. One of the Marines raised his hand. Dr. Moore, what are our chances of winning? Moore looked at the eager faces around her. These were professional killers, people who had spent their lives learning how to fight and win in impossible situations. Honestly, do not know, she replied, but I do know this. If anyone can figure out how to kill these things, it will be you. The fleet departed Earth on a Tuesday morning. 12 ships carrying humanity's finest warriors headed toward a distant star system where an alien civilization was fighting for its life. None of them knew if they would arrive in time to help. None of them knew if the aliens would still be alive when they got there, but all of them knew they were about to show the galaxy what humans were capable of. When someone asked for their help, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Steve Parker stood on the bridge of his flagship, the USV Retribution, and stared at what remained of the alien home world. Dear God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Janet Mills, his communications officer. The planet below was barely recognizable as a world that had once supported life. Massive biohips, each one the size of a city, orbited like hungry parasites. They pulsed with a sickly green light as they pumped something into the atmosphere. The surface was covered in what looked like a gray fungus that spread across continents like a disease. Admiral, we are detecting 37 large bio vessels in orbit, reported the sensor officer. Each one measures between 5 and 8 km in length. Parker nodded grimly. Any signs of the alien civilization that sent the distress call? Sir, I am detecting some energy signatures from underground locations. They appear to be very weak, so some of them are still alive, Parker said. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships. This is Admiral Parker. We are looking at exactly what the aliens described. The enemy has nearly completed their consumption of this world, but there may be survivors. We are going to hit them hard and fast. He turned to his tactical officer. Commander Brooks, prepare kinetic bombardment. Target the largest bioships first. Sir, kinetic rounds are loaded and ready, Brooks replied. Parker looked at the alien world one more time. Somewhere down there, people were hiding in caves and bunkers waiting to die. They had sent a message into space, hoping someone would hear them. Now it was time to show them that someone had all ships. Commence bombardment. The human fleet opened fire with weapons the swarm had never encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the ships launched simple chunks of metal, accelerated to incredible speeds. The tungsten rods struck the bioships with the force of nuclear weapons, but without the radiation, the first ship that was hit simply came apart. Its organic hull, designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, could not handle pure kinetic force. The massive creature split open like a broken egg, spilling smaller organisms into space. Direct hit on target 1, Brooks reported with satisfaction. Target is destroyed. Continue bombardment, Parker ordered. Within 20 minutes, the human fleet had destroyed 12 of the largest biohips. Remaining creatures began to move away from the planet, but Parker was not going to let them escape. Launch fighters, he commanded. I want every one of these things dead before they can warn other swarm forces about our tactics. While the space battle continued above, the real work was about to begin on the surface. Commander Kyle Rodriguez stood in the drop bay of his transport ship, checking his equipment one final time. Behind him, 49 other Navy SEALs prepared for what would be the most dangerous mission of their careers. Listen up, Rodriguez said to his team. According to our intelligence, there are alien survivors in underground shelters scattered across the northern continent. Our job is to reach them, secure the area, and establish a safe zone. He activated his helmet display, which showed a map of their target area. The problem is that the surface is covered with swarm creatures. These things are supposed to be fast, strong, and really hard to kill. They work together like a hive mind. So if one sees us, they all know we are there. Sergeant Lisa Baker raised her hand. Commander, what do we know about their weaknesses? According to Dr. Moore's analysis, they heal by absorbing energy from their environment, but they need specific chemicals to trigger the healing process. If we can disrupt those chemicals, we might be able to keep them down permanently. The transport shook as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the small windows, Rodriguez could see the gray fungus that covered everything. It looked like the entire world was covered in mold. 2 minutes to drop zone, the pilot announced. Rodriguez activated his communication system. All teams, remember your training. These creatures have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. Let us show them. The SEALs dropped from their transport into a world that looked like a nightmare. The air was thick with spores from the gray fungus. The ground was soft and squishy like walking on rotten meat. In the distance they could see large shapes moving through the haze. Stay. Together, Rodriguez ordered through his radio. First priority is locating the alien survivors. They had been moving for less than 10 minutes when the first swarm creature found them. It emerged from the gray muck like a living shadow. The thing was roughly the size of a grizzly bear, but it moved on 6 legs and had arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its head was mostly mouth-filled, with teeth like broken glass. Contact. Front, Sergeant Baker called out. The creature charged directly at their formation. Rodriguez fired 3 rounds from his assault rifle into its center mass. The bullets tore through its flesh, but the wounds began to close almost immediately. Switching to incendiary rounds, Rodriguez announced. His second burst used special ammunition that burst into flames inside the creature's body. This time, instead of healing, the wounds began to spread. Creature made a sound like breaking glass and collapsed. Well, that worked, Baker said with satisfaction. But Rodriguez was already studying his tactical display. Red dots were appearing all around their position. Dozens of them. We have company, he said. Lots of company. The swarm creatures came from every direction at once. They moved with perfect coordination, trying to surround the human team. But Rodriguez and his SEALs had fought coordinated enemies before. They knew how to break up formations and create chaos. Smoke grenades, Rodriguez ordered. Break their sightlines. The gray world disappeared into an even thicker gray as smoke filled the air around them. The swarm creatures slowed down, apparently confused by their inability to see their targets. Now we move, Rodriguez said. Baker, take 5 men and circle left. Peterson, take 5 and go right. Everyone else straight up the middle. Let us show these things how humans fight. What followed was not the kind of battle the swarm was used to. Instead of a coordinated defense, the humans split into small groups and attacked from multiple directions. Instead of standing their ground, they kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for the creatures to organize against them. Sergeant Baker's team used the gray fungus to their advantage, hiding in its thick growth and ambushing creatures that passed too close. Sergeant Peterson's group found high ground on a rocky outcrop and provided sniper support for the other teams, but it was Rodriguez's direct assault team that really shocked the swarm. Instead of trying to avoid the creatures, they charged straight into the largest group, using close quarters combat techniques that turned the battle into chaos. Rodriguez himself took on 3 creatures at once, using his combat knife and sidearm in a display of violence that would have impressed even other humans. He moved like a dancer, but a dancer whose every move was designed to kill. Within 30 minutes, the immediate area was clear of swarm creatures. The SEALs had not lost a single man, while at least 40 creatures laid dead in the gray muck. Command, this is Rodriguez, he reported over the radio. Landing zone is secure. Beginning search for alien survivors. They found the first group of Zephyrians 2 hours later, hiding in what had once been a beautiful underground garden. The aliens were thin and weak from months of hiding, but they were alive. Commander Zakti was the ranking survivor. When he saw the humans, his large purple eyes grew even wider. You came, he whispered in accented English. Someone actually came. Rodriguez helped the alien to his feet. We received your message. We are here to help. Zacti looked at the humans with wonder and growing fear. These creatures were nothing like any species in the galactic database. They were shorter than Zafarans, but broader and more muscled. Their eyes were small and focused like predators, and they moved with a confidence that suggested they were not afraid of anything. How many of you came? Zai asked. 50,000. Rodriguez replied casually. The alien stared at him in shock. 50,000. But there are millions of swarm creatures on this world. Rodriguez smiled and Zacti felt a chill run down his spine. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of something that enjoyed fighting. Commander, Rodriguez said, you have never seen humans fight before. Trust me, 50,000 is more than enough. As if to prove his point, explosions began echoing across the landscape. The other human teams were making contact with swarm forces, and the sounds of battle filled the air. But these were not the sounds of desperate defense that Zacti was used to hearing. These were the sounds of humans hunting. 3 weeks after the humans arrived, the war had changed completely. What had been a hopeless fight for survival became something else entirely. It became a demonstration of what happened when the swarm met a species that actually enjoyed fighting. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Thompson sat in his mobile command center, watching displays that showed swarm communication patterns across the planet. His psychological operations unit had been studying the creatures for weeks, learning how their hive mind worked. Sir, we are ready to begin phase 3, his communication specialist reported. Thompson nodded. Begin transmission. Across the planet, hidden speakers began broadcasting a sound that had never been heard in this star system before. It was the recorded death screams of swarm creatures played back through their own biocommunication network. But these were not random sounds. Thompson's team had carefully studied which frequencies caused the most distress to the hive mind. The effect was immediate. Swarm creatures across 3 continents began to show signs of panic. Some abandoned their positions and fled toward the polar regions. Others turned on each other, confused by the false signals flooding their shared consciousness. Excellent, Thompson said with satisfaction. Now they know what it feels like to be afraid. But Thompson's psychological warfare was only part of the human strategy. In the underground tunnels beneath the planet's surface, a different kind of battle was taking place. Captain Amy Chen led her mountain warfare specialists through passages that had been carved by the swarm for their own use. Her team moved silently through the darkness using night vision equipment and sound dampeners that made them nearly invisible. Target is 50 m ahead, whispered Sergeant Tony Martinez through the radio. He was Chen's best scout, man who could move through any terrain without making a sound. Chen raised her hand and her 20-person team froze. Ahead of them was a swarm bioprocessor, living machine that converted organic matter into nutrients for the hive. The alien survivors had told them that destroying these processors would seriously damage the swarm's ability to feed itself. Remember, these things are connected to the hive mind, Chen said quietly. Once we attack every swarm creature within 10 km will know exactly where we are. Private Janet Ross raised her hand. Captain, how do we get out after we blow it up? Chen smiled in The darkness, Ross, we do not run away. We let them come to us, and then we kill. As many as we can. Her team had spent weeks preparing for this kind of fight. They had studied the tunnel systems and identified choke points where large numbers of creatures would be forced into narrow spaces. They had placed explosive charges and prepared ambush positions. Most importantly, they had learned to think like hunters instead of soldiers. Move out, Chen ordered. They approached the bioprocessor from 3 different directions. The living machine was roughly the size of a city bus, with thousands of tentacles that sorted through piles of organic matter. It pulsed with a green light that provided the only illumination in the cavern. Chen's demolition expert, Corporal Kevin Lau, placed charges around the creature's main body. The bioprocessor did not seem to notice them. It had no reason to expect an attack in its own territory. Charges set, Leo reported. 30-second delay. All teams fall back to position. Alpha, Chen ordered. They moved quickly to a narrow passage that led away from the main cavern. Chen had chosen this location carefully. The passage was too small for the largest swarm creatures, but wide enough for humans to fight effectively. The explosion shook the entire tunnel system. The bioprocessor died with a sound like tearing metal, mixed with animal screams. Green fluid splashed across the cavern walls as the creature's body came apart. Here they come, Martinez reported from his forward position. The response was exactly what Chen had expected. Dozens of swarm creatures poured into the cavern from connecting tunnels. They moved with perfect coordination, following chemical trails and bioelectric signals that told them where the attackers had gone. But when they reached the narrow passage, they found something they had never encountered before. The humans were not trying to escape. Instead, they had turned the passage into a killing zone. Chen's team used tactics that no civilized species would consider acceptable. They collapsed sections of tunnel to trap groups of creatures, then used flamethrowers to burn them alive. They released poisonous gas into the ventilation system that connected to other swarm positions. Most disturbing of all, they captured wounded creatures and used them to send false chemical signals through the hive network. Chen to command, she reported over the radio. Bioprocessor destroyed. We have eliminated approximately 200 swarm units and are continuing operations. Copy that, Chen, came the response from Admiral Parker. Well done. But the most shocking human tactics were being employed by Danny Walsh and his team of former criminals. Walsh had been given complete freedom to use any methods he considered effective, regardless of whether they would be considered war crimes if used against humans. Walsh stood over a captured swarm communication node, a creature roughly the size of a human that served as a relay point for the hivement. The thing was still alive, but barely. Walsh's team had been very careful to keep it conscious while they worked. How long has it been transmitting? Walsh asked his communications expert, former hacker named Carl Johnson. 6 hours, Johnson replied. Every ping signal we send through this thing gets broadcast to approximately 50,000 swarm units. They are all experiencing what it experiences. Walsh nodded. This was psychological warfare taken to its logical extreme. By torturing one creature, they were effectively torturing thousands. The swarm's greatest strength, their shared Consciousness had become their greatest weakness, sir. We are detecting unusual behavior patterns across the southern continent, Johnson reported. Large groups of swarm creatures are abandoning their positions and moving toward the polar regions. They are running away, Walsh said with satisfaction. For the first time in their existence, the swarm is experiencing fear. Dr. Rachel Moore watched these developments from the human field laboratory with growing amazement and horror. She had spent her career studying theoretical alien life forms, but she had never imagined anything like what she was seeing now. The swarm creatures were perfect biological weapons designed by evolution to be unstoppable killers, but they had never encountered a species like humanity. Every advantage they possessed was being turned against them. Their rapid healing required specific chemical triggers, so the humans developed toxins that prevented those chemicals from working. Their hive mind coordination made them efficient, but also made them vulnerable to psychological warfare. Their energy absorption abilities were useless against simple kinetic weapons. Most importantly, the swarm had evolved to fight prey, not predators. They were designed to overwhelm peaceful species through superior numbers and coordination, but humans were not peaceful. Humans were apex predators who had spent millions of years learning to hunt things bigger and stronger than themselves. Dr. Moore, her assistant, called out. We are receiving a transmission from Commander Zetai. Moore activated the communication system. The Zephyrian commander's face appeared on the screen, but he looked different than when they had first found him. His large purple eyes now held something that had not been there before. Hope. Dr. Moore, Zakti said, I must ask you something. How long have your people been warriors? Moore considered the question carefully. Commander, humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We have been at war with someone or something for at least 10,000 years. Zakti was quiet for a moment. My people had no wars for 3,000 years before the swarm came. We believe that all intelligent species would eventually choose peace over violence. Commander, humans tried peace many times, Moore replied, but we learned that sometimes you have to fight to protect the things you love. We learned that sometimes being good at violence is the only way to stop evil. Zakti nodded slowly. Dr. Moore, I am beginning to understand why the universe sent you to answer our call for help. You are not here because you are good people. You are here because you are very good at being dangerous. Moore looked at her displays showing the progress of the war. Human forces were advancing on all fronts. The swarm, for the first time in their evolutionary history, was losing. Commander, she said, I think you're beginning to understand what humans really are. 6 months after the humans arrived, the last swarm biohip burned in the upper atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Admiral Steve Parker watched from his command bridge as the massive creature fell toward the planet like a dying star. Sir, that was the final confirmed swarm vessel, reported Commander Brooks. All enemy forces in the system have been eliminated. Parker nodded, but his expression was not one of celebration. Over the past months, he had watched his people do things that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. They had won, but victory had come at a cost that had nothing to do with casualties. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission From the planet's surface, Lieutenant. Commander Mills announced, "It is from." Commander Zetai put him through. Zirian commander appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Parker could see other aliens working to rebuild what remained of their civilization. But ZTI's large purple eyes held an expression that Parker recognized, the look of someone who had seen too much. "Admiral Parker," Zaktai began, "President Nara has asked me to convey the gratitude of our entire species. You have saved us from complete extinction." "We were glad to help, Commander," Parker replied. Sekti was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, may I speak freely?" "Of course. When we sent our message into space, we hoped that someone would hear our cry for help. We imagined that peaceful species like ourselves might band together to oppose the swarm. We never imagined that help would come in the form it did." Parker understood what the alien was really saying. "Commander, are you afraid of us?" Zakta looked directly at him through the screen. "Admiral, we have watched your people fight for 6 months. We have seen tactics that our military science considered impossible. You have shown us forms of warfare that we did not know existed." He paused and gestured to something off-screen. "Yesterday, I visited the site where your Dr. Moore and Captain Walsh created their biological weapon. They used captured swarm creatures to develop a virus that made the creatures attack each other. The entire northeastern continent is covered with the bodies of swarm units that died, killing their own kind." Parker said nothing. He had approved that operation personally. 3 weeks ago, I observed Captain Chen's mountain unit in combat. Zakti continued. "They trapped a group of 300 swarm creatures in a canyon, then used chemical weapons to prevent them from healing while they burned them alive." The screams could be heard for "Kill 'em!" "Commander, those tactics were necessary to win the war," Parker said. "I understand that, Admiral. What disturbs me is that your people seem to enjoy using them." Parker could not argue with that observation. He had seen the looks on his soldiers' faces during and after combat operations. They were not the expressions of people doing unpleasant but necessary work. They were the expressions of people who had found something they were very good at. "Commander Zaktai," Parker said carefully, "what exactly are you trying to say?" The alien took a deep breath. "Admiral, when we sent our message asking for help, we received exactly what we asked for. You saved our species, but now that the immediate danger is over, we find ourselves wondering what kind of beings we invited into our star system." Parker activated a new channel and spoke to his fleet. "All ships prepare for departure. We will leave orbit in 12 hours." He turned back to Zaktai. "Commander, you asked for help against an enemy you could not defeat. We gave you that help. Now you are safe and we are leaving." "Admiral, I did not mean to offend. You did not offend me," Parker interrupted. "You are absolutely right to be afraid of us. Any intelligent species should be." Zaktai stared at him in surprise. Parker continued, "Commander, the swarm was a force of pure biological destruction. They consumed entire civilizations without mercy or hesitation, but they were still just animals following their instincts." He leaned forward in his chair. "Humans are something different. We are not driven by instinct alone. We choose to be violent. We have developed our capacity for warfare over thousands of years, not because we had to, but because we wanted to be better at it than anyone else. But Why, Zacta asked. Parker was quiet for a long moment, thinking about how to explain humanity to someone who had never experienced true predators. Commander, on our world, everything that lives has to fight to survive. Our entire evolutionary history is about competing with other species that wanted to kill us and eat us. We learned to be more dangerous than anything else on our planet, including each other. He activated a display showing Earth. We have fought wars against our own species for our entire recorded history. We have developed weapons capable of destroying our own world. We have learned to kill efficiently, creatively, and without mercy when we believe it is necessary. Zacti's eyes grew wider. Then why did you help us? Because we choose when to use our capacity for violence, Parker explained. The swarm attacked innocent people who could not defend themselves. That made them our enemy. We do not tolerate bullies. On the planet below, the human ground forces were completing their final operations. Commander Kyle Rodriguez stood in what had once been a swarm breeding facility. His team had spent the morning destroying the biological equipment that the creatures had used to reproduce. Rodriguez to Admiral Parker, he reported over the radio, all breeding facilities have been eliminated. We also located and destroyed their genetic storage banks. Even if some swarm creatures survived somewhere in the galaxy, they cannot rebuild their numbers. Good work, Commander. Begin evacuation procedures. Rodriguez looked around the destroyed facility one more time. His team had been thorough. Nothing remained that could be used to restart the swarm's reproduction cycle. They had not just defeated this invasion, they had made sure it could never happen again. But as he walked back toward the extraction point, Rodriguez found himself thinking about the conversations he had overheard between the human officers and the alien survivors. The Zapirians were grateful, but they were also terrified. They had asked for help, and help had come in the form of creatures more violent than their enemies. Sergeant Lisa Baker caught up with him as they reached the transport landing zone. Commander, the aliens seem nervous around us. Can you blame them? Rodriguez replied. Baker, think about what they have seen us do over the past 6 months. Baker considered this. Her team alone had killed over 800 swarm creatures using methods that ranged from conventional firearms to psychological torture. They had used the creatures' own biology against them in ways that would have been considered cruel if done to any thinking being. Sir, do you think we went too far? She asked. Rodriguez stopped walking and looked at her. Baker, we came here to save an entire species from extinction. We succeeded. We did whatever was necessary to win. I will not apologize for that. But sir, the way the aliens look at us now, they look at us the way prey animals look at predators, Rodriguez said, because that is exactly what we are. The only difference is that we choose our targets carefully. High above the planet, Admiral Parker completed his final report to Earth. Command, the war was over. The swarm had been completely eliminated. The Zafran civilization was safe. Mission accomplished. But Parker knew that this victory would have consequences beyond saving one alien species. Word would spread through the galaxy about what had happened here. Other species would learn that there was a race called humans that could defeat enemies considered unbeatable. Some would see them as saviors, others would see them as a new threat to fear. Admiral Lieutenant Commander Mills said. We are receiving a final transmission. From President Nara. Parker nodded, put her through. The Zephyrian leader appeared on the screen. She was an elderly alien with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but now those eyes held a sadness that had not been there when they first met. Admiral Parker, she said, on behalf of all Zephyrians, I thank you for saving our species. We owe you a debt that we can never repay. Madame President, you owe us nothing. Parker replied, we came because you asked for help. We did what was necessary to give you that help. Bell nodded slowly. Admiral, may I ask you a question? Of course. When you return to your world, what will you tell your people about what happened here? Parker thought about that question. What would he tell them? That humanity had traveled 200 light years to save strangers, that they had faced an unstoppable enemy, and one that they had proven themselves to be more dangerous than the worst nightmares of a galaxy full of peaceful species. Madame President, he said finally, I will tell them that someone asked for help and we answered. I will tell them that we found an enemy worth fighting, and we destroyed it completely. Belnara's expression grew sadder. Admiral, in our culture, we believe that how you fight a war reveals who you truly are as a people. What do you believe your methods in this war revealed about humanity? Parker looked at her for a long moment before answering. Madame President, they revealed that we are very good at being monsters when we need to be. They revealed that we will do terrible things to protect innocent people. They revealed that when someone asks the universe for help against an unstoppable enemy, they should be very careful about what kind of help they receive.